Hello and welcome to this special bonus episode of The Dairy Edge. Teagasc are running a weekly Let's Talk Dairy webinar series, which is also being made available as a podcast. On this week's webinar, Stuart Childs gives advice on cows that are suitable for sexed semen and appropriate synchronisation protocols for both cows and heifers.
Good morning everyone and welcome to today's Let's Talk Dairy webinar. It's a lovely day in County Cork anyway. Hopefully it's lovely where you are as well. Things might be beginning to turn a little bit, I think, hopefully. So from a grass point of view, we should start to see some slightly better growth rates coming towards us, and hopefully we'll be getting onto the normal run of events from second rotation on now at this stage. So this week, I'm going to do a little bit on the sexed semen and also on the synchronisation protocols. A couple of questions came up about it last week. I'm going to deal with them this week. So I suppose there's a lot of talk about sexed semen. More so this year than there has been in previous years. I suppose people have started to dabble in it, I suppose is the term you'd use, in the last number of years, and with success. And there has been fairly successful trial work done as well with Stephen Butler in the last number of years as well. So like I suppose there's positives coming from the trial work obviously, but there's also points to note from the trial work also as well. So I'll just share a few slides, and as I said, we'll talk about the synchronisation protocols then as well, of which there are a couple, and we can put in the questions there through the chat as we go along, and happily deal with them as we go. Okay, so I'll just skip down to this last slide here now first, in relation to the sexed semen use. I suppose the most important thing is, from my perspective anyway, is that there are two categories of people out there who are going to use sexed semen. There are those who are going to use it successfully, and there are those who are going to use it because they feel they need to use it and won't be as successful. So herds that don't have good fertility already probably wouldn't be good candidates for it, in that they're obviously not delivering in terms of fertility performance already. However, they are probably going to be the farms that would nearly need it more because they're not generating enough heifers because their fertility isn't great in the first place, or maybe they don't breed for long enough. Obviously, also, if you're not inclined to do a lot of AI and heat detection isn't a strong point for you, it's probably not wise to go down the direction of sexed semen, because it's a little bit more of a fine-tuned art in relation to heat detection. So I suppose with heifers are probably the most suitable for it from the point of view that their fertility is going to be very good. Obviously, they don't have the challenges of milk production that cows are going to have, but there are a few key points that are going to be important for them. Obviously, they have to hit their target live weight, so we want heifers that are now in the region of, I suppose, in the black and white versions, 320, 330 kilos on average, going into breeding in a couple of weeks' time. Obviously, being good body condition, the two of those generally tend to go on hand in hand. So if they have good live weight, they should have good body condition score as well. And then they need to be cycling regularly as well. And that's true of the synchronisation protocols as well. They'll need to be cycling in many cases in order for those synchronisation protocols to work. When it comes to cows, then I suppose the important thing is that you're looking to probably breed off the best, so that's generally going to be the younger cows in the herd, obviously. Cleaner cows as well, clean cows, so no problems in terms of no health issues. So anything that had a milk fever, ketosis, a hard calving, retained after birth, or any health issue, including mastitis potentially in the intervening period, would be candidates not to be submitted for sexed semen. They should be crossed off the list, because they're going to have challenges, and sexed semen is that little bit more vulnerable product relative to the normal semen straws, and as a result that means we probably need to focus to use them on healthier animals. Now there's two sides to that. I suppose in the trials that Stephen has done, there could be a slight bias towards the fact that the cows were generally healthy, the ones that were used. So that would mean that if you're not going to implement that kind of regime on your own farm, and you're going to use sexed semen across all the cows potentially, or not be selective in the cows that you use, you could get poorer performance than you would have seen on the trials. So Stephen's objective is we take it that there's relative conception rate of approximately 60% to first service with normal AI, and Stephen's objective is that we should be able to achieve what's known as the relative conception rate of 90%. So relative to the 60% for conventional, that we should be able to achieve 54% first service conception rate with sex semen. Now, we haven't fully achieved that on the trial work that has been done on an average across all the herds that were involved in the trials. However, it has been achieved, and greater than that has been achieved in some of the top third of the herds that were involved in the trial. So I just got a question there in relation to parity 1 to 4. So that's actually just the cows that are first calvers through to fourth calvers would be the objective to target the sex semen for, rather than going for older cows. So cows that are into their 5th and 6th lactation wouldn't be being put forward for sex semen. As I said, no health issues, and that would mean that they should be cycling regularly then as well. Good body condition score and 50 days or more in milk at that stage. So when they're just after kind of hitting their peak or just gone beyond peak, so that they're in a kind of a settled state as such when they are being bred, so that there isn't as much pressure on the system of the cow in terms of milk production and going in calf as well. So there are, I suppose, the key points around the sex semen. The main thing, I suppose, is that people have to be talking to their AI technician and talking to their breeding advisors and so forth, and their own Teagasc advisors in relation to planning this. It's not something that you just jump in and decide to do. You need to be organised, I suppose, as you can see there from the right hand side. You need to have cows nominated for this or identified that are going to be suitable. And then when you talk to like Doreen Carden and Munster Bovine, she would say that you need to be very flexible on the day as well. So if you're going to, you need to be flexible in general as well as flexible on the day. So if you are heat detecting for sex semen, you are looking at submitting cows that have come bulling the evening before. So if your AI technician is coming this morning and cows were bulling freshly this morning, they should not get a sex semen straw this morning because they're too fresh. And because of the process related to sex semen, the semen is just not viable for as long as conventional semen would be in the tract. And that means that we have less of a window of opportunity to deal with when it comes to actually serving and having it coincide the semen arriving in the or being in the tract at the time when the egg is released. So we have to be a little bit tighter with our service regime. So that means a cow that was bulling last night would be suitable for sex semen this morning. And as I suppose, for example, as I said, it's a lovely morning where I am here in Cork this morning. So this morning would be a good morning to serve a cow, probably assuming that she was bulling last night, because she isn't under any kind of extra pressure from the point of view of a wet night that has compromised intakes potentially or anything like that. So the key thing is that it's really the AMPM rule has been there before for conventional semen, but there is a little bit of scope to get around that because of the fact that the conventional semen will remain viable for a long period of time. So it can be, you can see a cow bulling freshly enough this morning, have the AI technician serve her around now or maybe later in the morning or whatever, and the semen would still be viable and capable of fertilization, even though she's not going to ovulate till maybe a lot later on in the day. However, that is not the case with the sex semen. So a cow seen bulling freshly this morning, if you really want to use sex semen, will have to be served this evening rather than this morning, or else you make the decision that you serve a conventional AI if you're only on a once-a-day AI service. Then I suppose the other thing is that you need, as I said, you need to be flexible around the whole element of the nutrition of the cow on a given day. So like if there's very bad weather and, as I said, compromising intakes, then the advice is probably not to be kind of using sex semen in those scenarios, because again, it's probably going to undermine the animal. Now, if you can maintain the intake, obviously throughout that kind of dip in weather. So I suppose what like obviously we're going to get fluctuations in intake on a day-to-day basis depending on the weather. But I suppose what Doreen is quite adamant about is that if you're seeing a consistent downward pressure on intakes and performance of the cow. So is your milk protein dropping on your text message that you're getting for a number of days? Is your milk yield dropping in terms of what's being collected on every second day by the bull tank? If that's the case, then sex semen isn't going to be appropriate to use, because you're on a downward plane of nutrition, and you need, and that, well, look, there's probably a certain element of that going to impact on conventional semen also, if that's the case, because that means that there's severe nutritional consequences for the herd as a result of the management that's happening, or as a result of the weather. So you need to adjust that. So you need your milk to be at the very minimum static in the bull tank, and possibly rising, and you need protein levels to be staying consistent, because that's a good indicator of energy intake. And if the energy intake is dropping, obviously you're going to compromise the animal in terms of their reproductive performance. So just to be clear on that, I suppose we want to select the cows in advance. They need to be calved a good while, so you'll be looking that they have maybe 2 or 3 cycles already under them, so that they're hitting maybe the 3rd or 4th cycle by the time they're being served with sex semen. That means that they're going to be very clean, and they should also be clean, because they should have had no health issues in terms of their milk fevers, their ketoses, their mastitis, as I said as well. So need good records in a lot of cases for these. So any cow that got mastitis in the last couple of weeks since they calved, not necessarily at the point of calving, again would be ruled out for sex semen in the current protocols that we have there. So. And the heifers, as I said, they offer a prime opportunity, and I suppose the synchronization of both heifers and cows for people that want to use AI is something that Stephen want to use sex semen AI is something that Stephen is very strong on. Point being there that we can do this very early on in the breeding season. There is going to be a slightly lesser conception rate, as I've already outlined, in relation to sex semen versus conventional semen. So the fact that we've it done early in the season will allow people get another dairy straw potentially into those cows within the kind of the 3 to 4 week window, and it means that there isn't a big impact on 6-week calving rate potentially, and the numbers are relatively small in terms of the numbers that are going to slip at the start if they don't go and calf, so it won't have a big impact on farm performance overall in terms of 6-week calving rate, and obviously we know that underpins profitability as well. So the key things, I suppose, are to have them in right order, regularly cycling, proper weight and good condition, and as I said, with the cows, no health issues. So then, as I said, synchronization is the key. I suppose there's a couple of synchronization processes there. Just go back to the start here. So the normal one that we've been recommending for a good number of years with the heifers in particular would be that the prostaglandin, so observed heat for 7 days, and then coming in with your prostaglandin injection at 7 days, and AIing then after that. So everything should be generally coming in about 48 to 72 hours after this injection here that hasn't been already seen. There'll be a few then, just because of the way the hormones work in the animal system, that won't respond to that injection just because they're outside of the window where they haven't shown here for heat, but they won't respond to that injection on day 7, so they may need to be injected subsequently. Now, a lot of people probably tend to serve for the 7 days, inject, serve whatever comes bulling then, and release them after that, and whatever is not served is left off with a bull. But we would say that you probably want to be maximizing genetic gain in terms of trying to get dairy straws into all heifers, so that you would probably inject again anything that hadn't been served and get at least a dairy straw into them before they're released with bulls. Then I suppose you obviously need heat detection aids, and belt and braces approach is being using the likes of scratch cards and crayons as well. Tail paint doesn't work as well in heifers because of the fact that they are probably not heavy enough. So as I said, 320, 330 kilos, the level of friction between them as they mount and the distance that they travel up on the rump of the animal that's bulling isn't as significant as it would be in cows. So the tendency for it to rub off tail paint isn't as good with tail paint. So the heifers would be recommended that you would use scratch cards and crayons. Potentially crayons are very similar to the tail paint, but it comes off a lot easier. And the scratch cards kind of give an idea as well in terms of heat performance. Now there's as in progression of heat and how far along through the heat they are. So they're slightly scratched, they're maybe just coming in, whereas if they're like your scratch card that you buy from the National Lottery, if they're fully rubbed off, they have been in heat and they're due to be served. And we can't recommend enough people using those, but with the likes of and KMRs are something that people use as well. Now some people find that they get false positives with those. They try to build in kind of a color changes in them gradually as well, similar to the way the scratch card coating comes off to show the stage of the heat there. But again, it depends on what works for you, I suppose. But it's important that you are using heat detection aids, because it's very difficult, especially with heifers, to pick them up without the use of heat detection aids. So the long and short of this is, I suppose, that you're getting most of your heifers bred by day 10, as you can see here. It's taken about 3 weeks, obviously, for the whole thing to take place if you go the full distance in terms of following through with your second AI. So that may not work for everybody from the point of view of some people may have heifers on the milking platform just to breed them, and they want to get them off as quick as possible. So they may want to use a more fixed time AI protocol that can really synchronize and compact the breeding of the heifers so that they can be moved away quickly. I suppose just to point out as well before I move on to the fixed time AI protocols is that PG there is referring to prostaglandin, and there's many trade names out there for those, but the ones that are most popular probably would be Estromet in particular. Luteolase then would be the next one probably that you'd hear about most, and enzaprost as well. And there are other derivatives of it out there, but make sure, I suppose, discuss with your vet when you're getting it that say that you're going to use the right rate. Like anything, you need to read the labels of these. Some of these can have different dose rates. Estromet is generally 2 mil, but some of the other ones may need to be given at higher levels. So make sure that you give it at the correct dosage. So just moving on to the fixed time AI protocols. These are more expensive. Obviously, the PG, you're only using a PG shot on some of the heifers, and some of them are getting a double shot if you're sticking with the program for longer. I just need to move this out of the way. Yeah, sorry. So what they do is they promote cyclicity in heifers that are not cycling yet, which is different to the PG. PG won't work if heifers aren't already cycling. You would prefer it that these animals would be close to the target body weight of that 330 kilos, as I said, for the black and white, maybe around somewhere in the region of probably looking at 300 to 330 kilos, depending on the breed. So from 300 for your crossbreds up to 330 for your black and whites. You're AIing at a fixed time regardless of signs of heat, which is, as I said, the beauty of it from the point of view of people maybe who are breeding heifers on the milking platform and looking to move them off as quickly as possible. So they're not waiting for a long period of time in order to do that. Or alternatively, I suppose you can do this on an out farm, and you're also not going to be coming and going to the out farm on an ongoing basis trying to watch heifers, which is time consuming obviously, and also can be a bit hit and miss as well. So I suppose the GnRH is to get them to really ovulate. So you're kind of trying to get them to sync their regime by doing what you're doing here. So a shot of GnRH goes in here, and that is either receptal or overalin. And again, I suppose make sure that you're using those at the right dose rates. The P4 device is referring to a cedar or a prid. So again, it doesn't really matter which you use here, whatever's once they're applied correctly. I suppose there's a bit of a technique maybe in relation to the cedars and the prids as well in terms of the strings that come out of them. Heifers tend to do a lot of messing around and playing with one another, and they can pull at the string that comes from those and could pull them out. So they need to be either cut up short or turned in such a way that they don't stick out to entice an animal to pull at them and withdraw them. So then we should have computers responding for me now. There should be an injection coming up here. There we go. Sorry, it's all after happening out one together. We'll go through it slowly here. So this then 3 days before you're injecting with prostaglandin. So again, your Estromet or your Luteolase or whatever, and you're given a second shot then the day after that again, and then you're giving a shot of GnRH again plus timed AI. What that GnRH, as I said at the start, is inducing the ovulation. You're serving at the same time, so the tract now has semen in it and is also going to release the egg within a short period of time, so that they're going to meet at the same time. So this, I suppose, there are other derivatives of this synchronization protocol out there which have less interventions. So there's one less PG being taken into account. But the disadvantage of it is that you're going to have a scenario where you'll have 10 to 15% of the heifers actually bulling prior to the day that you were planning to do the fixed time AI. So from my perspective, I think there isn't much in it. There's a cost associated with that second PG, which is increasing the cost of the overall program by maybe about a $5, I think. But it doesn't, like, you 4 interventions, 4 runs through the crush here. But if you remove this and you end up bringing in heifers to serve the day before you were planning on doing it anyway, you still have 4 runs through the crush, more or less. So I don't think there's a big saving from a labour point of view in that. So I think you're probably going to have higher conception rates or higher in-calf rates as a result of this, because you're not trying to catch the heifers that come bulling in advance of the day that you're going to do it. This is very, very tight in terms of the way it works. So you're giving your GnRH, which, as I said, is releasing the follicle, or serving the same day, so there are semen in the tract to meet that follicle. When they combine, then obviously the chances of fertilization are quite high. Fertilization actually occurs in a lot of cases, or in 90% of cases, but obviously conception doesn't always happen. So very high chances of conception, or increasing the chances of conception by taking that extra step. And I know that Stephen Butters is very adamant that this is probably the regime that people should be using, rather than taking the chance on that lesser, slightly cheaper, but potentially less effective protocol. So they're the 2 protocols for synchronizing the heifers. As I said, this allows you to synchronize an awful lot of heifers in one, or serve a lot of heifers in a very short period of time. There's 2 elements to that then, I suppose. The people often get worried around the facilities that they're going to need in order to deal with this surge of calving that's going to happen. So say, for example, we're serving on the 24th of April. That's going to be 1st of February calving date, technically on a 283-day calving. And that means that they're going to be calving 1st of February. And people get worried that, like, I've served 20 heifers, are they all going to calve on the 1st of February? No, they're not. They're generally going to spread out over 10 days. If you're using sexed semen on those, and they're having heifers, obviously they're going to come a little bit earlier, so they could come up to 10 days early. But that said, there's still going to be maybe more stock calving. If this is your first time going down the fixed AI route, then you might be used to. So you need to make sure that you're going to be prepared when it comes to it, and have facilities to handle those extra. We'll say, if you're used to calving a bunch of heifers over 3 weeks, and now you're going to have that bunch of heifers calving within a week, then obviously it could put a little bit more pressure on facilities. There's positives, I suppose, in terms of you get the heifers calved, which gives them longer lactation for their first lactation, obviously, which is a good thing because they produce more milk. But it also means that they have more days to recover before they're expected to go on calf again. So generally, heifers take a little bit longer to recover following calving relative to cows. So that little bit of extra time that they get by having them calved at the very start of the breeding season, or at the start of the calving season, is a positive in terms of helping them to make sure that they stay in the herd. The other big advantage, when I talked to Don Crowley about it from a cell count point of view, is that you get heifers calved very early on. They're not inclined to be moved into calving areas and calving boxes that are potentially getting contaminated by older cows, and it does tend to help in terms of cell count management within the herd as well. Obviously, then they move into the cow cubicle area, which is being maybe dusted with lime twice a day. They're going through the parlour, they're getting teeth sprayed, etc., etc. All that's happening as part of the milking process, as opposed to maybe trying to run heifers through the parlour to teeth spray them to make sure that they don't have any cell count issues as they're calving down. So that's the synchronization protocol for the heifers. I suppose then for the fixed time AI for the cows, you're looking at a situation of trying to kickstart them, I suppose, in a lot of cases. And I think it's probably something that we need to think about a bit more There's definitely, we're really good at making a big burst, at trying to get submission rate good in the first 6 weeks, or the first 3 weeks in particular, and then we'll probably fall down on a number of aspects following that period. So we're aiming for our 90% submitted, and get a good conception rate from them. And like the national figures would suggest that we are doing quite well, as in that 6-week calving rate is rising more year on year, or generally is tending to rise year on year. Now it's still only at 65, 68% or so like that. So there's still plenty of room for improvement. But what's tending to happen is the cows that get calved late tend to slip further because we don't follow through with them or follow up on them. So the synchronization protocol increases the submission rate for those cows that have calved late, because they actually do get submitted for service because they've been put on the program. Whereas the idea of waiting for them to come, they may never come potentially. So it's a good idea to put cows on a program. I think once they've hit that kind of 35 to 40 days, that it's suitable to put them on it. So it will promote cyclicity. So like we've been talking about using once a day in the past as well. So that will increase the chances of a cow cycling, and assuming that they've calved down cleanly and haven't had any issues like your ketosis or milk fevers or anything like that, they should actually come cycling within probably anywhere between 10 and 20 days, probably post calving, especially if they go on a once a day. And so you could actually potentially let them show on that heat, but if you're going to milk them twice a day, if milking once a day isn't an option, maybe because it's cell count or whatever, you could put them on the synchronization protocol. And it works fairly similarly to the one that I've shown you for the heifers, except for when the GnRH is being administered here. And again, you're serving regardless of signs of heat as well. So and that's what I mean by when it gives 100% submission rate. So you're serving them, they're being submitted for service irrespective of whether they show heat or not. So we're giving our GnRH here again. PGs being administered -3 and -2 days. A GnRH the day before service as opposed to with service, which is the case or the evening before service, which is the case with the heifer AI, and then serving then on the morning of day 0. So I suppose Stephen works on these minus numbers here because obviously he's using these presentations, or he presents these figures at different in different fora. But I think it's very, very important that people look at or talk to their vet and write out their program on a day of the week basis. So down here in this area where we deal with Munster bovine, they write in the Dairy Gold Milk Matters magazine and in other magazines and stuff, and reading information and management notes that they have themselves, and they lay it out on a day by day basis. So what day is day -10? So is it a Monday or is it a Tuesday? What day is -3 supposed to happen? What day is -2 and -1, etc. And when are you serving then? And I suppose the key thing with these protocols, and again talking to both vets and talking to Doreen obviously in Munster as well, the challenge that people have here is actually remembering to do all of these extra injections when they haven't. Works really well where people have programmed drafting gates. So here they give their shot of GnRH this day and put in their cedar or their prid. They set up their diversion, I suppose, for the next couple of days then when they're due to happen. So even if they forget that it's to happen, they come out of the parlour following milking and there are cows waiting in a waiting area to be dealt with. Whereas if people don't have that facility, I suppose you have to be using reminders on your phone or something that's going to trigger you to remember that you have to pull them out of the group of cows on this morning to give that PG shot. They have to be pulled out again the second day. I think it's not so bad once we get into this area here, because obviously we're in a routine. They come out, once they come out on this day, we know that they have to come out again this day, and they're also going to be out the day after and then being served the following day. But it's this 7-day window of the cedar from the GnRH shot through to the cedar that throws in that risk of getting it wrong. The people forget that this is the point. They start coming a little bit too late, and it does impact on the performance of the programs. So it's important that people lay out the schedule, and as I said, reminders on the phone I think is probably the way to go for people, that they the night before that those cows have to be taken out, or on the morning, early in the morning when the cows are coming in, that you just remind yourself that there are cows to be pulled out for that program. So that's they're those. There's just one question: how soon after service would you scan the heifers for pregnancy, thinking of moving any that didn't hold into milking herd for easier heat detection and service? So yeah, I suppose, Alan, generally you can scan from kind of 30 days, 35 days on. I suppose if you've identified that they're not in calf, you could actually put them on you could just inject them potentially to bring them bulling if you didn't want. Some people do run them with the milking herd. I suppose it creates a bit of extra fuss within the parlour if in collecting yard is under pressure. Maybe in some cases adding extra stock to it isn't a great idea. But they do tend to stay back, from what I hear from people saying, that they don't try to come into the parlour, so they actually leave themselves behind in the back of the collecting yard. So it can work, I suppose, from heat detection, obviously, because you have a greater level of estrus activity happening in the herd. So it does work from that point of view, that they will be helped to be picked up. So yeah, you can scan from kind of roughly 30 days after service, and you should be able to identify whether they're in calf or not at that stage. So I suppose, look, it's just 10:30. I said I'd do a short one today. I've another group there shortly as well. So we'll leave it at that for today, and we'll be back next week. I suppose just to summarise on the whole protocol. So decide what program you're going to go on with your heifers. We would be recommending that people synchronise heifers, because it does get them calved earlier in the breeding season, which is good for them. And the synchronisation, obviously, as I said, from the point of view of Don's cell count work, would suggest that it's a positive from that point of view as well. And from a labour management point of view, look, I think the fixed time AI program does offer people, even though you are bringing in stock and giving different injections and so forth, but again, you're doing it on your own time, or your own, when you're starting, when you have to do these things. So there's a bit of planning around it, whereas you're going to have, with the PG, you're depending on heifers to be bulling throughout those first 7 days. You have to be available to AI them then for that period, etc. So there can be labour saving benefits to the whole fixed time AI protocol with the heifers. Now, there is a cost associated with it, but look, people need to make those decisions for themselves as to whether it works for them or not. I suppose in terms of the fixed time AI programs then for the cows, I think, again, for the sex semen, that's definitely something that people need to look at in terms of trying to get those cows that you've identified for sex semen served with it as early as possible, ideally into the first day of the breeding season, so that if they do slip or if they don't go on calf to that service, that they have the opportunity of getting another dairy strad in within 3 weeks, and that there isn't a significant slippage occurring as a result of it. There's just one final question after coming in. Best number of days of program. What is the best number of days program for heifers? Yeah, there's a couple of different ones. This is a 6-day program here for the heifers, and that's one that works kind of well and pretty well enough. It kind of a 6-day PRID program or CEDAR program, so you can see -8 to -2. What we're showing here, Tom, I suppose, is what we're generally recommending. So that's a kind of an 8-day program in total. As you can see for the cows, it's a slightly longer one, going out to 10 days. So the 8-day one works quite well for heifers, and the 10-day one is the one that's recommended for the cows. So there's another question after coming in. Is there a problem with repeats for cleaning up bull after sinking heifers, i.e. repeats on the same day? Very good point, Kevin, and actually reminded me of something there as well. So I suppose with the heifer AI, if you're going on the timed protocol, it's very, very important that you make contact with the AI technician and tell him what your plan is, because if you're normally serving 20-30 heifers over a course of 3 weeks, it's not a major pressure for him. I suppose he comes at whatever time he's coming at normally and serves the heifers. He's only got 1 or 2 to do. If you go down the fixed time AI route, he could have 20 heifers to do in 1 day. And if, for example, he has 20 heifers to do for you today and 20 heifers to do for your neighbour as well today, and then another 20 for the other neighbour and another 20 for the other neighbour, he's going to be under extreme pressure in terms of time and just the physical pressure of delivering that service on the day. So try to link up with them and plan it in such a way that, okay, it might mean that you're moving a day or two one way or the other in order to facilitate him, but it means that it's going to work better for everybody concerned. Okay, so don't head off down the route of synchronizing a bunch of heifers and ringing him the day before to tell him that they're all synchronized and that you have a number of heifers that need to be served the following day. So Kevin's point in relation to the bull is the same as the technician in reality. So the bull is obviously going to come under a lot of pressure if he is expected to serve a lot of or any number of repeats. So with heifers, I suppose, as I said, we'll just say 70% conception rate will be expected in heifers. If you're using the sexed, obviously, we're probably going to be closer to 60. So that means that there could be anything up to 40% of the heifers are heading in that direction to repeat. Now, again, similar to the fact that they won't calve all on the same day with the synchronization, they won't all come bulling on the same day. But again, there probably is a tendency that young bulls are what's run with heifers, so they wouldn't want to have a lot of activity to be dealing with in a very short space of time because they may not be capable of dealing with it. So what would be recommended is that, and I suppose it gives the opportunity to get a secondary straw in potentially, is to take out the bull for those couple of days when you know the repeats are coming. Actually heat detect for those days and use AI service technician again at that point, and that will reduce the pressure on the bull, and then he'll obviously have to pick up the repeats in the next 3 weeks again, potentially at that stage, but there will be a lot less of them there at that stage. They're going to be down into small numbers at that point, and he will be capable of handling those. So I suppose the one thing that has to be pointed out with bulls is that they're capable of putting cows in calf, but they can't put a lot of cows in calf in a short space of time unless there's a lot of bulls running with them. So that's an important point to note. Okay, so I think we'll leave it at that. So we'll be back again next week. So in the meantime, take care, have a good week, and mind yourselves. Thanks for tuning in this morning.
That's all for this week's Let's Talk Dairy webinar series. And don't forget to look out for more bonus episodes each week. I'll be back with our usual Dairy Edge interview on Monday, so do listen in then. I'm Emma Louise Coffey, and thanks for listening.